Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. This is a show that is dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. My name is Murph, and I am the host of it. So we're starting a new show tonight. So this show will go bi-weekly, alternating with albums that weren't quite what we hoped for. So this one's going to be called The Big Surprise. So these are albums kind of opposite of that show. So on that show, I had these albums that I really liked, but they never really quite made it up to where I thought they should have been, what my expectations were. These ones far exceeded my expectations and have actually were kind of huge surprises for me. So, and basically the only criteria is that one. There's no other criteria here. I chose an album that immediately came to mind when I decided I wanted to do this type of show, and that's this album, Dark Matter by IQ. So this was the first IQ album that I owned. Now, it wasn't the first one I listened to. Lush Attic and Wake were the first two I listened to. I think Wake was the first one. But this one was the first one I had purchased and was the first one in my playlist and the first one I fell in love with, the very first album I listened to them. I absolutely adore this album. It's just so good. Like every single track on here, I have no favorites. I just love them all. I think the biggest surprise for me is that I kind of knew from listening to Wake and Lush Attic that they had a very Genesee flavor to their music, that they were also a neo-prog band from the second wave of progressive rock, which came out in the early to mid 1980s, which were kind of poster boyed by Marillion. So this band was around that same time. They didn't make it big here in North America. I've come to love this band. I now have gone through a couple of their albums. I have now finally got Wake, which I've been listening to. I have another one that's waiting its turn in my playlist. And I love it. I have a video of them live in concert. All this stuff is great, but this album is exceptional. Now, I don't know if it's the best album that they have because I haven't worked through my way through the discography. That may take a few years for me to get to that, but I can tell you one thing about this album. It's absolutely fantastic. So my first feelings about the album were, before I listened to it, was from the stuff I'd heard was good, but I thought they were just another kind of Genesis band. But these guys have their own sound as well. Like they're not just playing off of that Genesis sound. They have their own unique kind of abilities. There's a lot more dominating keyboards, believe it or not, on this than there is on some of the Genesis stuff. Not that the Genesis stuff isn't very dominant, but this is a different sound of keyboards, a lot more symphonic sounds going on, I guess is a better way to say it, rather than just label as more dominant keyboards. This is probably more dominant synthesizers more than keyboards, but an excellent album with some really fantastic tunes. Yes, there are a couple songs that have that Genesis feel to them, none other than the longest track on here, which I think is Harvest of Souls. There's a part in it's just really very kind of Supper's Reddish. Like it really has that flavor to it. But the whole album is just fantastic. The instrumentation is great. The vocals are fantastic. The songs are really catchy and memorable. And it's just a fantastic album that I can't overstate how much of a surprise I was at how good this was. Now, I knew it was going to be good because I had listened to the Wake album and Lush Attic, and I liked both of them. But I didn't realize how strong this was going to be. It's got a dark element to it, of course. It's a Dark Matter, so it would have to have that. It does have some emotional hooks in it as well. But overall, every time I listen to it, I like it more. Definitely an album that's destined to be a masterpiece with me. And I've had this feeling about maybe 3 or 4 albums since I started the channel that I had never heard before, didn't really know. And in the case of 3 of the groups, I didn't know or hadn't heard their music much before. But were big surprises, pleasant surprises for me. And this one, I think, I don't know if it's the best of the ones that I've listened to, but it's really damn close, Anyways, definitely an album. If you haven't listened to this band, if you like Marillion, if you like that sound, you will probably like this. If you like Genesis, you will like this for certain, especially the older, early Gabriel era Genesis, and maybe a little bit of that early Phil Collins era Genesis. If you like those 2 things, you're going to like this album. It has a lot of similarities between that type of music and this Marillion. I don't know that they sound much like Marillion, but they definitely have that Genesis flavor in them, both bands. And this one is as good as anything Marillion has either. So anyways, IQ's Dark Matter will be the initial episode that we do for this big surprise. It was a big surprise for me, but a pleasant one. And so this show, of course, will come out every second week, alternating with albums that weren't quite what I hoped for. So you kind of get a contrast of difference. You get one that's you're a little disappointed in and one that you're really surprised in. So I'm going to try and alternate them. And as for the other show, a ranking of the songs, that is either going to end up back on favorites where it was originally, where I will have a episode every once in a while on that, or I may put it with another show on another night. I just haven't decided which way to go yet. It just really basically depends on time. I tend to make a lot of videos, as people see, and I try to be consistent about putting them out. So anyways, I'm not sure if that one's going to go there or not. It'll depend on some of the stuff I discussed with Ben. As far as ranking the albums go, maybe we might take a break from that, and I might do something different there on a Friday night. I don't know yet. We'll talk it over and see what happens. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this initial episode of Big Surprises. Please let me know what you think of it. Hit the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to hit the notification bell above my head. And we will see you next week for an episode of not quite what we hoped for. And we'll take care and have yourself a good evening. Goodbye.